I went straight to my CEO's office at the time and I walked in there. I said, hey, Dave, I want a job selling cars. I'll just work for free. And I did that for 4 months. I had $2.53 fuel in my car and I felt humiliated. Next year, I wrote $500,000 in commission, bought my first house, changed my life. At the end of the day, decisions is what separates us from the animals. People can smell it on you. I don't chase friends. I don't chase anything. Whatever's meant to be for me will be for me. Stand by your values. You've just got to believe in yourself. If you don't have that belief in yourself, why is anyone else going to believe in you? Don't let hyenas feed on you. You've got to have big balls. And then he said, and if it's meant to be, it's up to me. If you're in your 20s, you're a little bit lost, this can be the most important video you watch all year. My name's Jordan Strudwick, and today I'm going to be talking about how I went from my early 20s to my early 30s, went from zero to a $12 million business and 80 staff, and all of the lessons that I've learned along the way. Truth number one, no one is coming to save you. When I was in my early 20s, I was literally a car cleaner. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I clean cars. And I got to a point in my life where I was like, nah, I'm better than. So I started reading. I was reading a book called How to Make Friends and Influence People at the time. I went straight to my CEO's office at the time and I walked in there. I said, hey, Dave, I want a job selling cars. And he's like, Jordan, you're a car cleaner. And I'm like, well, what have I got to do to get a job selling cars? He said, I don't have a job for you selling cars. And I said, well, listen, I'll just work for free every single week until you give me a job. And he said, okay, all right. And I did that for 4 months. I worked for free every single weekend. And after 4 months, I got offered a job at the dealership, one of the brands across the road. I went straight to number 2 out of 25 salespeople in the dealership and I made it happen. No one was coming to save me. At that time I was a car cleaner, not with the best group of people. I had to change. So no one's coming to save you. If you're not happy with where you are, you got to get yourself out of it. Truth number 2. Just commit. I think a lot of the time when you're in your early 20s, you talk this big game and you can be like, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to start this business and blah, blah, blah. And you just half-ass do a heap of things. Now, when I started real estate in my mid 20s, I dilly-dallied for like 2 years, in and out, in and out, in and out. And I got to a point where I had $2.53 fuel in my car. I had to go put that fuel in my car. And I remember this lady looked at me like concerned that I was putting $2.53 and I felt humiliated. And then that's when I got to the point where I was like, I've got to either make this happen right now or I've got to go back to my other job. And right then, bang, committed. Next year, I wrote $500,000 in commission, bought my first house, changed my life. Truth number 3, decisions is what separates us from the animals. Now, if you put a dog in front of a bowl of food, what happens? The dog just starts naturally salivating, right? It starts drooling. It can't help itself. As a human, anything that we're doing is making a decision. Me being on this camera, on the other side of it, talking to you, that's a decision. Me getting up and giving my son a kiss on the head, that's a decision. Me going to the gym this morning, that's a decision. Me not going to the gym yesterday, that's a decision. At the end of the day, decisions is what separates us from the animals. So if you're not happy with where you are, make better decisions. You're the person in control of what you're doing at any given time. Number 4, don't be a victim. If you're hanging around with people that have got that victim mentality where they're always complaining about bills and, I have it around me at times. You have people complain to me about tax bills and this and that. And I'm like, man, someone's complaining about a tax bill. I'm getting a $400,000 tax bill. I don't complain about it. It is what it is. It just is part of the process to get to where you want to get to, right? So if you're one of those people, and for me, when I was younger, I lost a lot of people. I lost my best mate to suicide. I lost my auntie. She was only 33 when she passed away. And I wasn't from the best. I had a beautiful upbringing with my family, but I wasn't from money or anything like that. And it's very easy to fall into that victim mindset where you're like, poor me, poor me, poor me, poor me. But you realize as you get older, you can be a victor instead of being a victim, So for me now, I don't ever feel sorry for myself. I had it literally only yesterday where I found out yesterday my grandmother actually had a heart attack, right? My grandma had a heart attack yesterday. I'm in the middle of a meeting. I knew I was going to go see her in that afternoon and everyone's like, oh, you can stop the meeting and this and that. I'm like, well, I can't do anything right now. I'm not going to victimize myself over it. I'm just going to do the things that need to be done now and then I'll sort that out later. Don't get into that little pity party. So that's one thing that I definitely wish that I learned early, because when you get into that little pity party, it's a very quick road to get into depression and you can catch it early. Truth number 5. People are your biggest asset. I remember I did a seminar when I was in my early 20s and it was one of those ones where you kind of go around and you share all these things and all these things that you kind of been through in your life, ups, downs, all of that type of stuff. And there was a couple there, really beautiful couple, very humble couple. I ended up finding out that they were very, very wealthy. The lady, she had gone through a lot of really traumatic things in her life, a bit of abuse and all of those types of things. And, she'd kind of risen through the ashes, and I won't say who their names or their business or anything like that. I remember they said to me, because I had this massive business with, 70 staff, And I remember saying, like, what's the secret? They're like, it's not what you can do, Jordan, it's what other people can do with you. So empower other people to do things that you can't do. And if you can do that enough, then you're gonna have a great life and a successful business. Example of that within Strud. So, great example, I've got a CFO. So for example, for me, I'm actually fairly decent with knowing about money and like reading profit and loss statements. And, I actually wanted to be an accountant back in school for a little bit, but I have a very wide and shallow view on accounting. So I had to get a CFO. Now that CFO, he has worked with top tier firms. The biggest company that he's worked with that does $100 million revenue a year. Now he's an absolute expert in that field. Now, if I can empower him to do that, that takes it off me. And then I can focus on empowering other people, right? So that's an example. Number 6, never be desperate. When I started in the industry, especially in real estate, and this applies to anyone who's in business, I was desperate, right? And it's hard to not be desperate when you are desperate, when you need money. You're like, man, I've got no fuel. I've got bills to pay. I've got rent to pay, all that type of thing. But people can smell it on you. And as soon as you become desperate, you're not coming from a place of help to your client. You're coming from a place of help to yourself, and people can smell. It's like a shark, that, and getting that blood in the water. So never come from a place of disparity where you're being desperate for business or desperate for anything in life. For me in my life, I don't chase friends. I don't chase anything. Whatever's meant for me will be for me. It's probably pretty interesting. So like, I don't really have many stories where I feel like I've been really desperate for a deal, because I feel like I learned that in my early days to not be desperate for a deal. And I'm not saying to not want the business. Like, I think there's a very different line between, being desperate and being arrogant, right? Like, you don't want to ever come across arrogant to people. So, I learned from an early age, I'd never sit there and say, hey, I really want your business, but it's like, I'm not desperate for your business. I think there's a fine line between that. You got to want the business, but don't be desperate for the business. And I think if you can get to the point in whatever niche you're in where you become the product and they want you, they're gonna pay for whatever you say you're worth. You know what I'm saying? Number 7, stand by your values. I think when you're in your early 20s, a lot of it's kind of like fitting in, and you've got to fit into your group and all of that type of stuff. And a lot of, especially for males, there's a lot of young testosterone and all those types of things. And I think when I was kind of in my early 20s, the group of friends that I was with, and I'm still like friends with them now, but they were very different, a lot of bravado and, into a lot of things, and everything's kind of straightened out now. But I think back then I didn't stand by my values. I would try to mold and I'll try to fit into that group. And now, their values might just be being a nice person, always telling the truth, treating others the way that you ought to be treated. Like they're like, some values that I live by. And when I was younger, I probably didn't live by those because I was trying to focus too much on kind of trying to be cool. You know what I mean? So as you get a little bit older, you realize, okay, cool, what do I stand for? And you stand by those values, and a great example, talking shit. I don't talk shit behind people's backs. When I was younger, I used to get caught in that. And now, if you get caught in all the talking shit, then all of a sudden, there's victim mentality in there, there's gossiping, all of that type of stuff. If you're around any of that type of stuff that does not add any value to your life, just get rid of it. If that's people, get rid of them. If that's, family, distance yourself. Like that's what you got to do. If you want to become successful and get to that next level, stop surrounding yourself with people that aren't on your level or want to go to where you want to go to. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, we're all on a bus, and, some people are on a bus to go to a great destination, to go to the moon. Some people are on a bus to just live a normal life. And if they want to do that, that's all good. You got to surround yourself with the right people. Number 8, big one. You do not have to pretend. And when I say that, I mean, you just are where you are, and you are who you are. I think as a young male, especially in my early 20s, I would want to pretend that I was successful, and I want to show that I was successful. And I'd do that by, going and buying a Tommy Hilfiger shirt, or, spending money, or like thinking I was this, or, probably the biggest thing was that I used to want to pretend that I was so knowledgeable about sales and all of these different types of things. But if you pretend that you know everything, guess what? You don't learn anything, So you've got to switch from pretending and thinking that you know everything to being open and having a growth mindset and being like, okay, cool. I want to learn. I want to get better. Go narrow and deep, not shallow and wide, right? Now, the reason why I say that, I think for a lot of people out there, especially in the early 20s, you want to, 1 minute you want to do this and want to do that. Like, so for example, I wanted to be a car salesperson, then I wanted to start a wholesaling business, and I wanted to do brokering, and then I wanted to, do, a social media marketing business, and then I wanted to do real estate. I wanted to be a property. You want to do all of these things, right? Like, just go narrow and deep on one thing. And the reason why I say that is that, for me, I'm running, multiple companies, and I've got business partners in multiple companies as well. But if I go back right to the start, the property business for me is the one that has got me the farthest. Now, if I'd just spent more time on that, I'd probably have done better with the property business, even though it's done great now. Now, in saying that, I'm glad that all of those other businesses have happened. But in saying that, I think sometimes you can try to focus on, doing 5 different things instead of just mastering a craft at one thing. So go narrow and deep on one thing. And for example, whatever business is, like a great example, let's just say that you're a plumber, if you're a plumber and you want to start a plumbing business, sweet, cool. That's all you do. You just focus on plumbing. That's it. If you're an electrician, same thing. If you are a landscaper, and great example, actually, this is a great example, and I'm going on a little bit, but this is a great example. If you are a landscaper, just specialize in just doing, tree maintenance. Don't specialize in doing like 5 different things. Just do one thing, narrow and deep. Number 10, you've just got to believe in yourself. And that might sound a little bit cliche, but when you're going through some really dark times, you've got to believe that you're going to be okay. You've got to believe that you have the ability to do something with yourself. No one, like I said at the start, no one's going to come and save you. So if you don't have that belief in yourself, why is anyone else going to believe in you? Now, how do you get belief in yourself? You start going narrow and deep on something. You start learning more about a particular subject that you want to become a master of. And once you start doing that, you get that confidence and you can kind of get that belief. But, when you're in your darkest days and you feel like giving up on absolutely everything, you've got to get back and be like, nah. Take a breath. I've got this. I can do this. And I have the exact same thing, now as I've got older. I've realized that the amount of mental pep talks that I've had to give myself over the years is what's got me to where I am today. You don't need to seek validation from other people and ask them to believe in you. As long as you believe in yourself, that's the main part. And to top that off, if you end up finding a partner one day who believes in you as well, that is the game changer to go to the absolute next level. Number 11, stay on the court. I remember I learned this in that seminar when I was in my early 20s. No matter what you do, so if you're playing a game of basketball, right? If you're playing a game of basketball, you're on the court, you're doing the shot, you can control the influence of the game. Now, if you're that, parent or whatever who's standing on the side, you're sitting there, you're in the bleachers and you're yelling and you're doing this and you're doing that, no matter what you do, you can't control what is actually happening on the court. The only person who can control what's happening on the court is the players, right? So stay on the court. Don't be one of those people who just stands on the side and judges everyone and says this and says that and does nothing. Be on the court. Now, if you're on the court, you might fall over. You might miss a shot, but at least if you're on the court, you got the opportunity. Number 12, truth. Think win-win. So don't just think about what's in it for me. You got to think about what's in it for them. When you're doing a deal in whatever you're doing, whether you're trying to get a new client, whether you're trying to close a sale, think win-win. Now, for me, I add on to that is whoever that is, if they've got a bigger win and I've got a small win, that's all good. I'll have the small win, they can have the bigger win. So don't ever just think about, okay, how do I maximize out of this? You got to think about how can I actually help people? And it's like the other arms that we have at Strut and the other businesses that we have. For me, it's like, okay, cool. If I can find some of these people, like my other directors, my business partners, Jesse, Toby, Addie, my head of property management, Vanessa, if I can help them win, then I'm also going to win while they're winning. And it's great because you create that winning culture. Number 13, the best way to win a fight is not to have a fight. I remember when I was younger, sometimes I just go back and forth. You have those fights and you just go back and forth with people like, I want to be right, or, whether it's a bigger fight than that, but most of the time I want to be right and no, I'm right, blah, blah, all that type of thing. When I was younger, I'd have those fights. As I've got older, I've realized like they're just time wasting, So the best way to avoid a fight is to just not have a fight, right? Is to not go back and forth. If someone has an opinion on something that you don't necessarily agree on, who cares? It doesn't matter. You just do what you want to do and they can do what they want to do. Don't let them affect. And I think the thing is that people always try to focus so much on trying to be right. Doesn't matter, right? So don't engage in fights to people. There's no point. Number 14, be responsible for your wins, but always be responsible for your losses, And I think your losses are the most important things because the losses are where you learn your lessons. You don't learn lessons from winning. You learn lessons from losing, and not wanting to be in that same position again. So be responsible for that. I see that, especially in the real estate business where someone say, I lost this listing because of X, Y, Z, the other agent was cheaper commission. It's like, well, no, the reality is you didn't prove to that owner that you were worth more money and that you were going to get them more money in their pocket. That's a reality. So be responsible for your losses, whatever they are in life. Don't blame anyone as to why you've lost. It's like, cool, I lost, I could do better, and I'm going to do better next time. And that's how you learn to win more. Number 15, no one is self-made. Whether you're from money, not from money, any of that type of thing, people are made from the people that you have around you. You know, so for example, for me, I have beautiful humans that are around me. I've got a beautiful wife, you know, mum, dad, you know, I've got some beautiful people around me that have helped me grow, business partners, friends, all of that type of thing. So no one's self-made, and don't forget about all those people when you know, get to those next levels. The other thing too, when I say no one's self-made, is that I've learned so much information from people like, you know, Tony Robbins or Robert Kiyosaki. I don't even know these people just by listening to podcasts or reading books. So, you know, no one's self-made, you know, but what you want to do is get little bits and pieces from all of those people and then create that into who you are, and bang, that's yourself. Truth number 16, everything is your fault. You are the reason why you are where you are in your life, right? All of the decisions that you made, all of the mistakes that you made, they're all on you. Don't be one of these people that blames everybody else and, oh, I'm not where I want to be because I lost that job because I had a dickhead boss, or whatever it is, like whatever story you're telling yourself, let it go. The reason that you are where you currently are in your life is because of you. And if you can own your life, that is the first step to grabbing control of it and actually becoming something. Number 17, fail faster. So when I was young and in my early 20s, I tried all these different jobs, right? I tried all these different jobs in the same industry, in car sales, but I was always, you know, trying to find out if the grass was greener. And I remember back in the day, people would always be like, oh, you know, that's not good on your resume. You need security and this and that and blah, blah, blah. But for me, like, I just wasn't happy. So I was like, cool, I'm not going to happy here. I'm going to go there. And if I knew what I knew now, I would have just done that whole process way quicker, you know, and just being like, cool, not happy here. This isn't for me. Bang, go to the next thing. Not happy here. Not for me. Go to the next thing. And then eventually you'll find somewhere where you fit and you not necessarily fit, but where you actually align to the business and the values or whatever or the industry that you're particularly in, right? So fail faster. Don't just sit somewhere and be unhappy and, you know, not enjoy your job. Be like, okay, cool, sweet, not happy here, want to go there. Number 18, don't lie. Just before I started Strud, I remember the way that I used to lead and manage people. I used to always just tell like white lies, you know, oh, I was in a meeting, or, you know, oh, I can't do this because of XYZ or whatever, like just little white lies, not like bad lies. And I remember one of my team actually brought it up to me one day, like, oh, why do you lie to me? And I'm like, oh, I don't lie to you. And they're like, yeah, you tell like little white lies, like you're in a meeting, you know, when you're not in a meeting or whatever it is. And I said, oh, what's it matter? Like, it's not like, you know, no one's dying, whatever, you know. And I remember that particular person just said to me, if you could lie about something so small, what could you lie about that's actually big? And it hit me. And I'm like, wow, like that's so true. So since then, I don't lie. And I teach all my business partners not to lie. No white lies, no anything. Just be 100% down the line. Even if I'm late, right? If I'm late for something, I'll just say, hey, I'm late because of why I was late. I wasn't late because, oh, sorry, I was stuck in a meeting or whatever it is. Like, just be upfront. People have a very high EQ these days, you know, and if you're lying to someone, they can generally feel it. So, you know, it's much better to just tell the truth always. Telling the truth will change the way that people respect you. And the reason why, great example with me, what you see is what you get. Like, I'm not perfect. I'm a very much a real human, but I'm always very straight down the line. And when people know that you're an honest and integral person, that then spreads your reputation. And I actually had it recently with someone who's just joined the business. You know, they were in a finance business previously, and they just said to me, they said, it's crazy. Like, you've got a big reputation out there in the community, and, you know, you've got a big business that does 500 sales a year. And this particular person said, you know, the crazy thing is I've never heard one bad thing about you, you know, and that's because I'm a decent human, you know, and I think that comes back down to always telling the truth, you know, and I say this to people, I don't always tell people what they want to hear, I'll tell them what they need to hear. And I think when you do it and you live your life like that, not out of trying to fight with people, but when you're honest and upfront with people, you know, that reputation will then spread. Number 19, hyenas feed on lions. So when I very first started Strud, I remember I went through leaving my other business that I was in, and I went through a really difficult time. And I remember I sat down with a friend the day after I quit my job, and he said to me, Jordan, he said, right now, you know, you're a lion. And he said, you used to be the big lion, king of the jungle. Now you're a little weak lion, and the hyenas are feeding on you. And that stuck to me, because at the time I was very, very relatable, where I was like, I felt like I was kind of laying on the ground and everyone was just feeding on listings or whatever it was. And I remember just thinking, like, I'm not going to let any hyenas feed on me, you know? And after sitting down there with that friend, I really felt those words, like, don't let hyenas feed on you. You know, hyenas feed on lions, you know, just stay away from the hyenas. You know, don't been around a lot of hyenas in my life, and you probably don't realize it because some of them might disguise themselves as lions, but yeah, don't let those people feed on you. You know, just, you know, make sure that you're around other lions, because you're going to go further with lions than you are with hyenas. Number 20. I actually learned this lesson in my early 20s when I was selling cars. There was a guy named Rusty. Shout out Rusty if you still watch. And he was a farmer. He used to always come in, buy Toyota Prados and Land Cruisers cash. And one day he was buying his daughter a car, actually, Selena, I remember. And I remember I said to him, and this dude just had aura. Like, I can just tell, you know, I was a young 20-year-old, but I can just tell he had money, like always paying cash, and he was a farmer and just a real gentleman, genuine, nice guy. And I said to him, Rusty, what's the secret to making money and getting ahead? And he said, Jordan, you've got to have big balls. So he said that, and then he said, and if it's meant to be, it's up to me. And I remember that literally always just stuck with me. So big balls, and if it's meant to be, it's up to me. Sweet. Well, I hope that content was helpful for you guys that are out there in your early 20s. Just remember, things are always going to get better. If you like this content, like, subscribe, comment, send it to a friend. Peace.